Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna alhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa baraka sallama tasliman kathira amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another session of a day in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. For those who are here today for the first time, we are studying the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam as far as his habits go during his day-to-day life. So it's not just the generic seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, cradle to grave. We took a different twist to this, where we'll be focusing on different parts of his life during aspects of the day and different instances, how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam conducted himself during those instances. And the book that we are studying is called a book called Ash-Shamail Kubra, which covers the sublime conducts and habits of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Up till now, we are covering the etiquettes relating to eating and certain types of food that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked, certain things Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam disliked, or certain things that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised against. Next chapter is with regards to moderation in eating and drinking and advices in relation to that. Before I start, just like every week, I would ask everyone to renew our intentions that we are doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As with everything in life, we do it solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And secondly, to create within us the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to implement the sunnah in our life. The sunnah has been left behind as a way of protection for everybody, and it's also a way of life as well. Every prophet has come down, alayhimus salam, as a role model for their respective ummah. And for you and I, it's Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's blessed life is a complete practical example as to how Muslims should lead their life. Now this next chapter, what it's focusing upon is how we control our appetite and how we are considerate about our dining etiquettes and eating habits as well. Part of being a Muslim is to be wary of every aspect of life. This is what I mean by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has not left any stone unturned. He showed us completely how to do each and everything. And consumption of food and drink plays a big role in shaping us to be the person that we are. Like we know the famous saying, we are what we eat. So it's very important, not just being considerate about halal, which is the most important thing as far as food is concerned, but also the quality of the food in terms of hygiene and standards, because these things affect a believer's spirituality. And aside from all that, the moderation of eating also has an effect. When a person is inconsiderate of these things, then it affects our spirituality and ultimately our iman as well. So this next chapter we will go into indulgence in exquisite foods is detestable. Sayyidina Mu'az ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was dispatching him to Yemen, he instructed him thus: beware of indulging in the luxuries and fineries of life, as the true servants of Allah refrain from such indulgence. Sayyidina Abu Umama radiallahu ta'ala anhu relates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, soon in my ummah, people will eat various types of food, and they will drink different types of beverages, and they will wear different colors and types of clothing, and they will indulge in futile talk. These are the worst of my followers. Sayyidina Abu Barza radiyallahu ta'ala anhu relates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, I fear that you, i.e. the ummah, will be misled by following the sinful desires of your stomachs and private parts, and that you will be deviated by the lusts of your carnal self. Sayyidina Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu relates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, eating everything that one desires is also considered as extravagance. So here, if these few narrations are mentioned one after another before commenting, there's a reason so that we have a bit of perspective before we elaborate. Wealth, as I mentioned previously, wealth, prosperity, a good life is not something that is forbidden. Wealth is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a ni'mah. And Allah gives wealth to whom He wishes. But the moment that wealth and prosperity, luxury and lavish living gets to our head, it makes us arrogant and ignorant. Ostentation, pride starts entering our lives. If you look in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he chose to live a life of poverty for a reason. It's not that he was a destitute by nature. As we all know, those of us who've studied seerah, we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was a tajir. He was a merchant, he was a businessman. From a young age, his uncle shaped him. Abu Talib shaped him into being a businessman. From a young age, he learned tradecraft. And he was successful at it as well. He went to lands far and wide and learned the art of trade, and he did it honestly, and he became famous for it. It is one of the reasons why al-Mu'min Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha proposed to him, because she heard about his honesty in trade. As we know, if you study with the seerah, that Khadija radiallahu ta'ala used to get so many proposals. Why? Because she was a beautiful woman, she was a successful woman, and she was a woman of noble trait. These are the things that normally men look into in a woman, that they look at how beautiful she is, how her academic backing is, how her financial stability is, and things like that, how her social stability is in terms of family background, etc. These are things normally look at. And she used to always turn down those proposals because she knew that these men were wanting to marry her for ulterior motives. But when it came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this was prior to Rasulullah sallallahu becoming even a prophet. So his nature was such of a man of a soft demeanor, a soft temperament, and honesty and trustworthiness. So when she found about these qualities, beautiful qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu, she proposed to Rasulullah sallallahu. So Rasulullah sallallahu, it was not that he chose to, he was destitute or he was poor. He chose the life for himself because as believers we are taught that we are not meant for this world. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in a hadith that ad-dunya khuliqat lakum. It's a hadith Qudsi where Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. This is what a hadith Qudsi is. And in this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, ad-dunya khuliqat lakum. The world has been created for you. وَإِنَّكُمْ خُلِقْتُمْ لِلْآخِرَةِ. But you have been created for the hereafter. We're not meant for this world. So why have we been sent in this world? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in another hadith that ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah, that the world is a plantation of the hereafter. And I'm sure we've heard of the famous saying that which you shall sow, you shall reap. So exactly is the life in this world for us, that whatever we do in this world, we shall reap of it in the hereafter. If we do good in this world, then we shall reap from the fruits of Jannah. And on the contrary, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us, that if we live a sinful life, ignorant life, then we shall be consuming from the fruits of Jahannam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from this. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam led us such a life that he chose to live this life because he was being an example to this ummah, that we're not meant for this world. And what it is with regards to why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam chose and why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was advising against these things, that we have more, if you see generically into the in the ummah or people in general, you have certain sins that are great major sins, like consumption of alcohol, consumption of drugs, adultery, fornication, stealing, murdering, etc. These are great sins, right? But often you'll find not everyone is indulging in those. Those sins are caused as a result of complete weakness of Iman, where a person's Iman is very critical. But one thing you'll find a person, when due to lack of spirituality, is that they indulge in other sins that become the means of the Iman weakening, as a result of which it leads them in towards temptation of committing these greater sins. And this often happens as a result of feeding into our ego and feeding into our carnal desires. There is nothing wrong with eating, there's nothing wrong with drinking, there's nothing wrong with sexual intercourse, cohabitating, for so long as it's done in the halal way. When we are indulged in intercourse with our spouse, then it becomes halal. Outside wedlock, it becomes haram, right? If we eat halal food, then it becomes a worship. It becomes rewarding for us. If we eat haram, even if it's halal food, but from haram means by stealing or whatever, or deceiving, then that food affects us. Then it ultimately has an influence on our Iman. And as a result of which, then it starts leading us towards a point where our Iman is at a critical stage, where we are becoming vulnerable towards committing greater sins. So what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is advising us here is that these worldly luxuries, we should be very mindful of it, so as not to be overindulgent. This is why in Islam, it's that if you look at the teachings of Islam, they also have worldly benefits as well. What happens when a person overeats? If a person is not controlling of their diet, then what happens? They start becoming obese. Obesity leads to diabetes, cholesterol, blood pressure, etc., etc., etc. You students would know, especially med students, right? You'd know that these, because of not being moderate with eating and drinking, it leads to many physical deficiencies. Health affects our health, right? And a Muslim is such that his outer and exterior and interior life is a recognition as an identity. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised us in the moderation of eating, not just because it affects us spiritually, but also affects us in terms of our health and health conditions as well. But again, there's nothing wrong with eating good food and quality food and things like that, but we don't overindulge in it so as that affects us and makes us ignorant. Because one of the things, like the greatest fitna this ummah faces, is when we are so indulged in these worldly materialistic things that it makes us ignorant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When any sort of indulgence leads us to the negligence towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that becomes critical to our Iman. So this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam advised us. You hear that, look, in the further narrations, that Sayyidina Abu Juhayfa radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that after eating tharid, he came in the presence of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and unintentionally began belching. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to him, "Do not belch near us. The person who fills his belly the most in this world will be the hungriest on the day of resurrection." Meaning that, hungriest on the day of resurrection, meaning that it doesn't mean in the sense that he'll be deprived of food, is that he'll be feeling the pangs of hunger because of the scenario of Qiyamah. I don't want to go in too much because it takes so much of our time, we'll be going off track. But the scenario of Qiyamah, the day of resurrection, will be such that every one of us, even the most pious of, even the Anbiya will be fearing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with each and every individual. So that fear will overpower us, right? And on top of that, what this hadith is trying to say, that we will be feeling the pangs of hunger. Those people who are very negligent and overindulgent in the worldly materialistic things, this will affect them in the akhirah as well. But you also find in the hadith the condition of those people who are righteous in this world. What the narrations say? Some narrations say that their faces will be shining like bright like the 14th moon. Some narrations said their necks will be so high. Some narrations said that they won't be fearful because they'll be getting the book of deeds in the right hand. As soon as the book of deeds is given in the right hand, they'll be showing it off. Look, I've become successful. I've got the book of deed in my right hand. The fear is going to be suddenly gone. Because that righteous life that they lived, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those people, that Allah will take away that fear from their hearts. After hearing this, Abu Juhayfa radiallahu ta'ala never ate to his fill for the rest of his life. If he had breakfast, he would not have supper. If he had supper, he would not have breakfast. Eating simple food. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala narrates, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wore coarse clothing and ate coarse food. What it means by coarse clothing and coarse food, that coarse clothing, it means that in those days, I don't know if it's still applicable in this day and age because trends change. But you'll find that's what you'll find even in today, the practicing people would hold on to these narrations. During that time, people who wore finer fabric, like thin quality fabric and all that, were considered as elite people. People who wore coarse clothing, were meaning like very thick clothing, very woolly and heavy clothing, was considered the clothing of middle class people, lower class people, simple people. So the rich and elite people used to wear like very fine clothing, very thin clothing, and that was the way to express their wealth. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived different to that. So his clothing were very coarse, meaning they're very thick material clothing. And as for coarse food, meaning again, to give you an example, that like today you have, and this is so funny, look how sunnah has such benefits. You got fine flour and you got coarse flour, right? You got white flour and you got wholemeal flour. Now in this day and age where we're living in the world of fitness and healthy eating, what do we do? What do we notice? That everyone starts eating wholemeal bread, granary bread, seeded bread. Why? Because they find the benefit that those sort of grains and those sorts of bread are more beneficial. Whereas white bread, white rice, what's wrong with it? Right? It tastes better to eat. It's finer, but there's no nutrition in it. It's full of carbs. Right? I remember hearing the aunties and uncles saying that my child has put me in a complete transfer and changed the whole menu in the home and taken out white bread outside and the white atta is out in the house. Now it's brown atta. So the browner flour and is a lot more coarse. It's a bit more rough, right? It's not soft on the palate. And most of the time you'll find barley, those sort of breads are more made from barley. Now barley, even in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a lot cheaper than wheat. Wheat was considered more expensive. So that's why you'll find in some narrations, I'm sure they might come here, that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he had bread, he would eat barley bread because it was more simple and it wasn't considered as lavish eating, and he would avoid eating wheat bread. So similarly, you see this in this today's society as well, that the white bread and white rice is more fine. Even if you go to the restaurants, you'll never find them serving wholemeal chapati or brown rice. It'll be white rice. It'll be white chapati because it's finer. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam this was his habit. He would eat the food of humility and simplicity. Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates that he never did two foods enter the belly of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during one sitting. If he ate meat, he would eat meat only, and if he had bread, he would eat bread alone. If he had dates, he would not eat anything else with it. This was just, again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's abstinence, although we've covered in the narrations that where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say that, Khairul idam, the best of all condiment or soup or curry was the vinegar or something like that. Sometimes he would combine. These were instances where he was a host or where he was a guest. But when he was eating personally, he would add, and this was again Rasulullah doing this out of his own preference, and we'll get to the reason why. Al-Mu'minin Sayyida Aisha narrates that the first innovation that crept into the ummah after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to eat one's fill. So what does that tell us? That before the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba and everything, and the companions in their lifestyle, it was such that they were implementing the lives of the people. Implement the lives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That moderation in eating, controlling their dietary intake and all that, because they were trying to emulate the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Slowly, as the time went by, then what happened? Immorality and all that started creeping into the society. And the first thing that happened was that people started becoming extravagant and overeating. This practice increases the mass of the body, weakens the heart, and causes one's desires to multiply. Sayyidina Abu Ja'da radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam once saw an obese person and said to him, "If only your resources were utilized for other reasons, it would have been better for you." What it means by resources mean that if you use your time and wealth in other things that will benefit you, rather than just spending your time and wealth in just eating and just overeating and feeding yourself, you would have been in a better place. Look how Islam, it promotes even healthy life, staying fit. That Rasulullah saw a protrude belly on a person and he was advising against it. That this is not how a believer should be. This is not the nature of a Muslim. And being corpulent, meaning obese, is not actually from the identity of a Muslim. A Muslim is meant to be fit and strong and healthy, Not necessarily have to be bulked up or not necessarily have to be an athletic body and all that, but certainly not being somebody who is obese. This is against the teachings of Islam. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala reports that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "A tall glutton will be brought before Allah Ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah, who constantly engaged in eating and drinking, and in the sight of Allah he will not even have value equivalent to a mosquito." Thereafter Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Read the following verse of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا, and on the day of resurrection we shall assign no weight for them. A hadith in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim also reports that a huge man will be brought before Allah Ta'ala on the day of resurrection, and he will not even be equal to the value of the wing of a mosquito. Meaning these are those people who are very indulgent and in the world, and chasing after the dunya and ignorant of the purpose of our life. Meaning that they let the world beguile them. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala relates that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The worst of my followers are those who have been nourished with luxuries and have been bred with it." This is again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is referring to not those people, like as I said, Imam Ustad used to say as well, that wealth itself is not a fitna. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in hadith that for every ummah there is a fitna, and the fitna of my ummah is wealth, here it's not referring to wealth itself. Again, wealth is from Allah, it's rizq. Food is rizq, money is rizq, good livelihood is rizq, a house is rizq, a good spouse is rizq, right? This is all rizq from the sustenance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To have wealth, to be wealthy, to live a life of prosperity is not wrong. So long as this does not make us ignorant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? It's when the love of dunya enters our heart, that's when it becomes a means of our destruction. One of the signs of Qiyamah is when the people will have the love of dunya in their hearts. As a result of which, when the love of dunya enters their hearts, what then happens? They will be turning away from the love of akhirah. They will have meaning. What does that mean? They will have no concerns for the akhirah. That the life that they will be living will be such that they will be turning away from the remembrance of Allah. Sunnah will start leaving their lives. The faraid of Islam will be leaving. The salah will be they start missing a salah or two, and then they'll start missing fasting in Ramadan. They will be considerate about giving the zakat and all these things. And a time will come where they'll be completely leaving all these injunctions of Islam, and where their life will be no different to that of a non-Muslim. This is one of the prophecies of that a time will come, and we're seeing it today. Aren't we seeing it today? That's how, as believers, we're so attached to materialistic that if a person's got a house, he's always thinking of a second house. If a person's got one business, he's always thinking of opening another business, chasing dunya after dunya after dunya, whereas his current lifestyle and his conditions are sufficient for him to get by in dunya. But it's just chasing after dunya. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu relates that a certain disbeliever used to eat a lot, but when he accepted Islam, he began eating less. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam apprised of the situation and remarked that a mu'min eats to fill one's gut, whereas a disbeliever eats to fill 7. Meaning that eating less does not mean that we overly starve ourselves, it's that we control our diet. We shouldn't be such that we eat so much that what happens is we need someone's support to get out of the seat or to get up from eating, that we overeat and fatigue has overtaken us. This sort of eating is despicable. It's against the teachings of Islam. al-Mu'mineen Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala narrates that from the time Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to Madinah al-Munawwara till his demise, his family never ate bread made from wheat flour to their fill for 3 consecutive days. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam never ate barley bread to his full for 2 nights consecutively since his arrival in Madinah al-Munawwara till his demise. Some of these narrations will be repetitions. Nabi sallallahu alaihi Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam's family would not light a fire in the house sometimes for a month at a time. They would survive on dates and water. Meaning lighting a fire it's an expression meaning that the stove was not lit. One night Amirul Mu'mineen Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala sent a goat's leg to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala was busy cutting it into pieces in the dark, and somebody asked her if there wasn't a lamp in the home. She said if there was oil to burn for the lamp, she would have used it for food, meaning that she would have used it to prepare food. Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala have narrated from Sayyidina Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu that sometimes Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would see a date lying about and he would say, if only I did not fear that the date was from sadaqah, I would have eaten it. This narration was there just to teach us that, for those who don't know, that sadaqah was forbidden on the Ahlul Bayt, on the people, the family of the Prophet ﷺ. They were forbidden from eating sadaqah. So Rasulullah ﷺ was saying that if it came from because he doesn't know where the food is coming from, he would avoid something just even as inferior and simple as a date, but he was fearing that that this consumption may be forbidden for him. Look how considerate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala said to the people, you are engaged in fulfilling your desires as far as eating and drinking is concerned. Where I have heard Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala saying that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would sometimes toss about from side to side due to the severe pangs of hunger. He would not even lay his hand on poor quality dates to satisfy his hunger. I'm just going to Malik ibn Dinar rahmahullah states that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam never ate bread or meat to his fill except on excusable conditions. excusable conditions refers to when, I say, for example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was invited over as a guest. So he would eat in those certain situations. Even then he would be controlled, but he would eat just to keep the host happy. Or when he was a host himself, he would partake in the meal so that his guest would not feel shy while eating food. Apart from those instances, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very controlling about consumption of food. And this sort of lifestyle also, it also imprinted it onto the Sahaba as well. Sayyidina Abu Waqqas, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, there was a time when I was the seventh amongst the seven followers of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The only food that we could eat was the leaves of the acacia tree. Our excreta used to resemble the droppings of goats and camels. Because in those early days what happened, there was a lot of ousting and boycotting of the Muslims. The mushrikeen of Mecca were complete, and they were cut off from any aid and things like that. And it came to that they were living this sort of life, but they still held on to the iman. Because the iman is such, when a person is iman, is such that when it's in the right place, then the amusements of dunya no longer are bedazzling in our eyes, because the focus becomes the akhirah. Now what does that tell us of our own iman, our own condition? When we're chasing after dunya and the luxuries and the lavishes of dunya, and we're chasing, what does it tell us that where our iman is? That in itself should be enough to get self-accountability. Now, why were these narrations mentioned? These narrations are mentioned is because if you come across some of the narrations we came across, is that carnal desires were brought up, right? What is carnal desires? They are the greatest enemy of a believer. When we feed into our desires, we are leading ourselves to the path of temptation. And when we go on down that path, we are opening ourselves and become vulnerable to committing these major sins that I've mentioned. Zina, stealing, lying, and other major killing of life, cheating, consumption of haram, interest, etc. We are leading ourselves towards that path. A Muslim's life is meant to be a life of abstinence. So why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned the encouraging towards controlling of our diet is that we're not feeding into our ego, not feeding into our temptations. Our heart tells us that carry on eating, it's so nice, food. Our heart tells us that we should enjoy food. And today, we're living in a society that, and I've seen this myself, that especially because of social media, there's always some new type of food or dish or something being coming out. I remember a couple of weeks ago, actually a month or two ago, a friend and I went to a tea shop, and we're just catching up. And in that shop, there was this Dubai chocolate or something it was called. And I never heard of it, right? So he was telling me, they're selling the Dubai chocolate. And I was like, what's this Dubai chocolate? And he goes, you don't know? I go, no, it's all over social media. And people are going crazy about it. And just 2 days ago, I was online, and somebody in Newcastle was asking, where can I get Dubai chocolate from? And I was like, oh my God, this trend is... And apparently this Dubai chocolate is meant to be very expensive in Dubai. So now in UK, apparently it's available in certain stores and things like that. And people are going crazy for it. And I thought, come on, let's see what the fuss is all about. And all it is chocolate that is poured over, or chocolate with the filling of some pistachio cream or filling or something like that. I tried it and I was like, wow, like, is this it? And maybe the Dubai version is probably a bit more tasty, but how tasty can it be that people are paying, what, $200 for it? But this is exactly what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is trying to pull us away from. There's something, this is to take self-accountability. That if our life is such that something new, a new dish comes out, or a new takeaway is opened, or by the way, a new place is open to it, and we straight away, our attention is like, oh, do you know what, I need to go to that place. And we become restless that until I don't try from it, I can't, I won't be content. If this is our nature, this is sufficient for us to tell us that where our iman is, the condition of our iman. What are we doing? We're literally chasing after the dunya. And there's always something new coming out. Like as we grew up, there was only something called burger. That's it. It was just a burger. Now you got, gourmet burger and smash burger and these all different trends are coming and people are just chasing after it. Sometimes it's a gimmick, but this is what, if we are chasing, if our nature is such that we're going this, what does that tell us? That this is telling us the reality of our iman, where our iman is. And this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was advising, that do you know when to controlling of diet, why it's so important? Because what we're doing, we're not giving in to our desires. We're suppressing our desires. Right? This is one of the benefits of, apart from the health benefits, the obvious, which you students know better than me, right? You know better than I, the benefits of having a healthy diet, right? Controlling our meals and things like that, high protein, low carb, and all that stuff, the benefits of it, right? And intermittent fasting, these you all know better than I do. But spiritual benefits, what does it do? That controlling our diets and all that, it does not make us greedy. It does not make us a glutton. It does not make us lazy, right? It protects us from these habits. It also spiritually, ulama write, Imam Ghazali wrote a whole big book on abstinence from dunya, and we were actually forbidden to study that book when we were students in madrasa, because what happened when students started reading it, what would happen, those students that were eating less, started controlling compensating when it comes to controlling the diets and all that, and they will fall weak. So Ustad said, during your student life, you cannot read this because you need the energy to focus and study, and you're depriving yourself. So that book, because that book goes into depth about controlling the carnal desires and things like that. And one of the things mentioned, that overeating and over drinking and consumption, what did it lead to? Hard-heartedness. Hard-heartedness is a spiritual defect. What is meant by hard-heartedness? That what happens is that we become very immune to people. That we become less compassionate. We become ignorant, and we don't sympathize. We don't empathize towards them. Right? These good qualities of being compassionate and loving, these all die out. We become hard-hearted in the sense that we hear people or needy around the world, or destitute people, poor people, and if our heart is not telling to contribute towards it, it's because of hard-heartedness. So overindulgence in consumption of food, this is what it leads to: hard-heartedness, laziness as well. You overeating and all that. What happens? That it discourages you, it makes you lazy and tired. So then when you want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get tired. Why are, in the hadith we find, narrations find that the two most difficult salah, the signs of a munafiq, is that those people who are negligent towards Fajr and Isha. Why? Those are the two difficult ones. Why? Because Fajr is at so early in the morning that we have to get out from the warmth of our bed and to stand up, and especially in winter right now, no matter how hot the water is, as soon as you step out of bed, we're cold, right? And Isha is because, especially in the time of summer, it's so late, and we want to get to bed, and we give up. Those two salahs are the most challenging for us. Sometimes ulama also mention Asr is also very difficult for a person as well, because that is the time when people generally are earning livelihood. Because during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Zuhr time was very hot, noon and Zohar time as well. So it was the custom of the Arabs and all that. They used to stay indoors and they used to take like a siesta at that time around Asr time, which was more cooling. So the trade and business used to take place. So then a person is indulged in trading and business and earning a livelihood, that they could lead to be negligence for ibadat. So this moderation of eating and all that, this is all not just for our spiritual benefit, but also our physical benefit as well. This is how considered Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you not think that if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to, that he could have lived a lavish life? He could have lived in a bigger house rather than a house that if he was to lie, that it wasn't long enough for him to completely stretch his leg, or if he was to sit, stand up, it wasn't high enough for him to stand completely tall and erect. He chose to live this life because what role model would he be to his respective ummah, that if he was overindulgent in dunya as well, when he himself is advising against it. So this is from the teachings of the, and this is why you'll find the pious predecessors, even so many righteous people today, that you'll find that they're controlling of the food because it affects their spirituality. This is the beauty of deen. That Rasulullah, what is deen? Deen is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? That the belief in Allah and the following of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? This is the primary deen. There is no third entity mentioned in the shahada. There is no third criteria mentioned in the shahada. It's La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? To believe in Allah and to fulfill the rights and injunctions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? Muhammad Rasulullah, by way of the blessed sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nothing else. This is deen in itself. This is what makes us, and this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's blessed life, his sunnah, was recorded. The finest of details have been recorded by Sahaba, so that it can be passed down from generations to generations. So to us today, so that we know how to live our life as Muslims. This is Quran and Sunnah, Quran and Hadith. This is the teachings. This is what Islam is founded upon. And this is why you see that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why he was so considerate. And just to again reiterate that, it was simply because to control our carnal desires. Our carnal desires are the very things you'll find the majority of the ummah falls into sin because of not being able to control our carnal desires. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best to understand. We'll leave it here today because next week's chapter is relating to the etiquettes and the sunnah, or relating to drinking, and also mentions the different types of beverages that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked. So we'll leave that till next week. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best understanding and give us the tawfiq to act upon what we have been studying and listening to. And please also encourage brothers and sisters, please encourage, again, this program is open to all family members, everyone can come. And as you know, the class we're studying, it's bite-sized, it's easy to also to digest and to understand. Invite others, inshallah. Once the video is uploaded onto YouTube, we'll share the link, and please also share your link as well. Any questions today?